Hello and welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today we start a new book, Galatians chapter 1, and we are continuing through our look at the Psalm chapter 6. Now, in verse 6 of Psalm 6, it says, I am worn out from my groaning. All night long I flood my bed with weeping. I'm sitting on my bed here. Can you imagine weeping so much that you are swimming in your tears? That's what he says. I'm flooding my bed. Now, obviously, that's an exaggeration. Our tear ducts aren't able to flood beds like this. But this is one of 7 Psalms of the 150 that are Psalms of repentance. The most famous, obviously, is Psalm 51. But this is one of confession and humility. And it's written for the chief musician. Some say, well, that's God himself, but most say it's the lead singer in David's orchestra, if you like. But this chapter basically gives us permission to express our pain, express our sorrow. Now, you might say, well, why is he weeping? Why is he repenting? Well, it looks like that the enemies of David, whether it be the Philistines or his wayward son, or whether it's King Saul, we don't know, the enemies of David seem to be pressing in against him. And David's interpretation of that is God is chastising me. He says in verse 7, my eyes grow weak with sorrow, they fail because of my foes, because of my enemies. Away from me, all you do evil. The Lord has heard my weeping. The Lord has heard my cry for mercy. The Lord accepts my prayers. All of my enemies will be overwhelmed. So quite clearly, the enemies pressing in around him caused him to come to this point. But if you go to the beginning, you'll see how he interprets it. He says, Lord, do not rebuke me in your anger or discipline me in your wrath. You see, when opposition comes against us now, we have a sort of a different perspective to David. David wasn't as sure of his standing before God as we are, the other side of the cross. We can lean on God's love, lean on his grace, because we know that his anger and that his wrath was poured out on his son Jesus on the cross. And that the chastisement we get is because of his covenantal love. So God does discipline us, but he disciplines the sons that he loves. That's what Hebrews tells us. So have mercy on me, Lord, for I'm faint, and heal me, Lord, is what he says. My soul is deep in anguish. How long, Lord? How long? Turn, Lord, and deliver me and save me because of your unfailing love. So he leans on God's love, and he says, I know that I'm busy being disciplined at the moment, but please cut it short and deliver me from my enemies. Well, this wrestling with God like this over issues is something that many of saints of old have done. Martin Luther, as he came out of his prayer closet once, is famed to have said, Vicamus, Vicamus. And that is, we have conquered, we have conquered. After weeping and travailing in his closet, he comes out and he says, okay, victory has now been won. Anyway, that's Psalm 6. Now, what do we make of Galatians? Galatians is written by Paul. This is the context. Paul, when he came to faith, was preaching into a world where there were as many Jews as non-Jews. Now, the Jewish believers had grown up following the Torah, all its rules and regulations and ceremonies, not eating pigs, resting on Saturdays, etc., etc. Now, when some Gentiles had got saved, there's a group among the Jews who felt that they needed to embrace all the Jewish traditions. And when Paul heard about this, and some of these guys in Jerusalem managed to get to Galatia, which is, Paul was writing into Galatia and to other places. When the word got there, Paul was heartbroken. So he writes this letter to say, that's not the gospel. And so he starts by greeting them with the grace of Jesus, and then gives his credentials as an apostle. He says, listen, I didn't receive this. I didn't make this up by myself. Jesus gave it to me himself. I went and spent time with him for 3 years. Then I went down to Jerusalem, hung out with Peter for 14 days, 15 days, met with James as well, the brother of Jesus. They all confirmed that this is the true gospel. He says, if anyone preaches another gospel, let them be eternally condemned. If an angel preaches another gospel, let them be eternally condemned. And he's basically saying, you don't have to turn Gentiles into Jews No, Jews and Gentiles both become believers in Jesus. That's the essence of what this book is all about.